Suicide Noted podcast live stream. I'm joined today by 5 awesome human beings. If you are familiar with the podcast and related projects, you may know some of these people or have heard them. All guests on the podcast. Episode 268 is coming out Monday, by the way. Check it out. It's pretty awesome. Live stream, pretty new. So my name is Sean, North Carolina, and I want to introduce our guests today. And then we will be talking about a question which will likely move in different directions. And depending on where you're seeing this, that's probably just YouTube live right now. If things are working, you should be able to chat and I should be able to see it. I don't know if my guests can see it directly. We're working that out. But if there's something you want to say, by all means ask. Let me go and ask people here to introduce, and I'm going to start with Michelle. Unmute, please, Michelle, and share.
Okay, hi. Yes, I'm Michelle, and I'm on this chat all the way from Japan. I like to brag about that sometimes. Whatever. I was on about 2 years ago, I think now, and I think it was a question of like, what is your relationship with suicide? I think is what you said.
Yeah.
I try to think of something catchy. I was going to say that I think that it's kind of like a road sign at the intersection of transness and trauma. So that's it.
And a memoir title is born again. Something between transness and trauma. If that's not there in the subtitle or title, yeah. Thanks, Michelle. In Japan. Still in Japan.
I'm not leaving.
No, okay. You're right. Going counterclockwise here to my screen. So next up is Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I am in Washington, and
you were a guest on the podcast about almost 2 years ago, also around Michelle's time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a broad question of anybody who's watching this probably knows that if you were a guest, and all of you have been guests, because for now that's what these lives are. I will extend it out to other humans too, but not yet. You've either attempted suicide or come real close. That's essentially who my guests are. So that is a default connection we all have here to suicide. If you want to add more, or we can just move on. Name and place is great. Is that cool, Elizabeth? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Did you say something about elephant ears? Because I do not see them.
I have elephant ears. I wish I was an elephant. I hope when I die I become an elephant.
Wow. This is a totally different topic. And that's a great question for a future live too. Moving in a counterclockwise here is Ash. What's up, Ash?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. I'm Ash. In Northern California. I was on the show, about a year ago, maybe?
I think more. You gotta check.
Yeah, I'll have to look. Actually doing really great since the show, surprisingly. So
cool. Really cool. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
One of the cool things about doing this is that I get to see a lot of the people that I may not have seen again, it's kind of cool. Dogs are allowed, but only in small pieces. Not the dogs. We're not chopping up the dogs, but I just don't want to hear them that much. Joe, what's up? No, it's okay. You can mute yourself, I think. Anyway, we don't have to get into the tech stuff. You don't need to stay muted if you want to, and there's noise. That's cool. Joe, what's up?
Hello. I'm Joe, also from Northern California. I was on the show not quite a year ago, I think. And my relationship to suicide, had chronic suicide ideation for many years, and multiple attempts. But I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here. Yeah. And then last is M. List for now. We might have other people join us. What's up, M?
Hi, I'm Em. I am from Iowa, and I recorded on the podcast. I believe the episode came out in the first week of December of last year, 2024.
Hmm.
I'm 26, but has struggled with chronic suicidality for probably over a decade, and yeah, still struggle to this day, but I want to do my best to help others where I can. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome. Thank you. This is great. And just if anyone's wondering, my connection, in addition, well, I started the podcast, but maybe what matters more is I've not attempted to take my life. Um, I lost my best friend to suicide a number of years ago. And without being formally diagnosed, I am comfortable in saying that I am a, let's say, chronic passive ideator. I'd say that's 20 plus years when it goes up and down into the sort of level of it and the intensity of it. I wouldn't want to use that word incorrectly or use that if it weren't obviously entirely true. And I think it is. I wouldn't use that otherwise. Sometimes I feel like I need to, and then we'll get to today's primary question. I have thought about this and that perhaps it would be better if the person who did this was an actual attempt survivor as well, right? Like true lived experience. And then I think to myself, yeah, I'm not going to try to end my life just to get more cred. So I just, you know, um, today's question was posed by Elizabeth, who's joining us here. She's in Washington. Now, we had a couple of other conversations in the last 2 or 3 weeks. If you're wondering, and one of them was about why people can't or don't talk about it who are struggling with this, whether that is it's something new for them, something they've been exploring or thinking about for years, a recent attempt, wherever you are on that. Why is it hard often to talk about it? That was an interesting conversation. We also had a conversation where I think we broke it up into two parts about how people engage with you or treat you, whether they're professionals, friends, or whomever. And we'll circle back to those at some point too. These conversations will go in all kinds of directions. But today's question or main idea by Elizabeth, and Elizabeth, maybe it would be better, or if you're cool with asking that question again, the one you posed, the way it feels best for you right now. You got to unmute. I'll unmute you. And then we can take it from there. And if you want to ask the question and actually start with your little bit of an answer, let's roll.
Okay. So I've been wondering how, for other people, and I'll share my own situation, but for other people, how their mental processes and emotional processes have changed and evolved regarding their reasons for wanting to end their life, how they've changed over the years. If it's something that is, continuing to go on, have the reasons for wanting to die, for wanting to end your life, have they changed significantly? Have they remained the same? Have new reasons been added? Or the opposite of that, if they have decreased, then what are the reasons for wanting to live? How have those changed and evolved over time?
Let me take that and try to pare it down a little bit. Whether you are currently suicidal, however you define that, planning, which overlaps with that a lot, or are not, the reasons for either wanting to die / wanting the pain to end, right? That whole, or wanting to live. Maybe easier. Let's just start with the wanting to die part, and then we can do that second other part. It might be a little easier. So the reasons, this is such an interesting question because we could go reasons real deep, hardcore, big life, existential pain, or we could just go, the spark was me losing my job. And they're both true, right? Whatever it is for you. So I would say for our purposes, however you want to answer that, but the main idea is the reasons for Is it, Elizabeth, is it because the wording matters? The reason for feeling suicidal or trying or just both?
I mean, the reasons are what lead to trying.
Yeah.
So
All right, cool. Then you all can think about your past or how you're feeling right now and frame this or respond however you want. I'm not going to call on anybody. That's weird, but hand up just so we're cool, or little emoji. Because I haven't tried, I cannot answer that question, but I can tell you for me, yeah, I'll wait for me because I'm not even that clear on it.
do you want me to tell you mine?
Yeah. No, actually, Ash, I did say you would go first. So why don't, you go first, then we'll go to Ash.
Yeah, you
Elizabeth,
want me to go first?
if you want
Okay.
to,
Yeah. So it's, I guess, been significant, and maybe that's what stimulated the question in my mind. I was wondering about that for others. It significantly shifted because the original reasons for my wanting to end my life was that I was under the mistaken belief that I was the cause of my daughter's PTSD, because I have severe PTSD, and sometimes the way it shows up symptomatically day to day is just problematic and disruptive. And I was seeing those symptoms in my daughter. There was no reason. I couldn't figure it out. And as the years went on, I just finally decided I'm fucking my kid up. I need, I just need to exit. And then I found out that I was not, in fact, the reason for that. And it was horrific because it only added to my own trauma, because then I found out she was being sexually abused. And then over time, years have gone by now, and my reasons for wanting to die are just feeling like I can't live in this world in a way that I want to live in the world. I can't show up the way that I want to show up. It's like I see my potential here. I can't live up to it because I keep living out these undealt with traumatic history that hasn't been dealt with or processed. I just keep recreating it, reliving it. I'm ineffective. It's fucking frustrating beyond words. That's just not even, yeah. So now it shifted from feeling like I was causing these problems for her to realizing like this is a problem that spans generations from before I was born to now onto my daughter. It's just bigger than I can fucking cope with. I can't hear you.
Yeah, because I muted myself. That's how sound works. Math, sound, life stuff, bad. Podcast, decent. Everything else, nah. We're going to get to you, Ash, in a sec, because I know you might have to go back to work real soon, and I want to hear just something I wanted to share and add to that. And then we'll circle back if you have time, because this is not just going to be one quick response. This is an ongoing threaded conversation, inevitably, invariably. But one of the things I was thinking about, and I know Elizabeth better than a lot of you because she's been helping with some podcast projects and other things. So I also know a little bit more about, and I'm curious to see how some of this other stuff that I know about you, especially with pain, ties in, but we'll wait for that. The question I have or thought about was, once you opened the door, once it opens, so for you primarily, Elizabeth, from what you were saying, it was back in the day, X number of years ago, feeling like you were the reason for your daughter's pain. That's shifted in large part from what you shared but the question I have, it's not really a question, it's just to add to this larger conversation, is like, once that thing gets open, is it hard to close for anybody when you get that close, right? Even if the reasons change. So
I mean, you can say metaphorically, you hear about Pandora's box. I've thought of it that way. It's like you let that genie out of the bottle, whatever.
Yeah.
It's hard to, but literally the neural pathways in our brains, like once you have thought that, that's just truly the science of it. The more you think about something, the more your brain is going to think about something. But preventing that is a formidable task. I mean, it's
Ash, I want to
Yes.
hear from you. You had your hand up, and so we're all just talking about that question and related stuff. What you got?
For me, dealing with a lot of trauma and being a first responder, dealing with a lot of trauma makes it hard. I have severe PTSD and a lot of other mental health issues, but um, dealing with severe trauma and seeing a lot of traumatic stuff makes it hard. And then there's the stigma of being a first responder, and I have to be the strong one. And people don't realize how far and how close to the edge, like a lot of first responders really are. And that makes it hard on us, to be honest. And it's just it's hard. um we see a lot of traumatic stuff, and that creates more PTSD along with the personal PTSD that I have from sexual assault and mental illness, and it gets to be a lot eventually.
Right. It's like almost it's one of these questions that's so fascinating, because in a way you could have this, like, some people could have a long list of an answer, but also it's just like it becomes like there's in a way no answer. That's how I'm
Yes.
interpreting it. It's just like because I've been dealing with all of these things, and depending on word choice and how you frame it, it could be 23 things or one thing. You know what I mean? Like it could just be pain, or we could
Yes.
break it down. But at the end, after doing it, especially I would imagine for years and years, it just is. I think that's where a lot of people, and I don't, it may not apply to anyone here. It just is. It just becomes a thing that is. Capital I, capital S. I believe M is up next. N. No. Yes. Sean, get your shit together, bro. You got to host. You're a lot. You're not doing a pre-recorded podcast where you get to edit yourself out. You're live, baby. M, you're up.
Yeah. So for me, I think the biggest change I've noticed in my suicidal thoughts since they started is just that now I have a name for what's behind them. Whereas when I was younger, I didn't know that I was dealing with PTSD. I didn't know that maybe I was just feeling really hopeless about ever recovering from my eating disorder. Like the essence of being suicidal and how it feels hasn't changed. It still feels dark and lonely and tiring and impossible to get through. But like, whereas I used to engage in suicidality more impulsively based on feelings, now I feel like it's coming more from my logical side of my brain of like, logistically, I have no idea how I'm going to live a normal life with so many PTSD triggers, and I have no idea how I'm going to ever recover from my eating disorder, or is my eating disorder going to kill me on its own? Like, these are just answers that I don't have, and so it just feels really hopeless from like a cognitive perspective.
Just it was interesting. And when we were talking, and as you all share stuff, it's interesting how I kick back into, I remember this part of this. We talked about this a little bit, but there's a lot of conversations, so I don't remember all the details until I'm like, oh right, Michelle, we talk, right? You get these like, but the word is hope, and it's thrown around a lot, and it for good reason. But when you run out of that, am I sounding like Dr. fucking Phil right now? What the fuck? Like a bad Dr. Phil? Get out of here. When you're in a suicidal state, you're gonna have to feel. Shut up. Now it's hope, man. If you lose that shit, Shawshank Redemption, baby. I mean, it's done. Really. No bullshit. Like I'm just talking about me. When I think, no, but I know that won't be okay. that's where it gets dangerous. That's where the second bottle of wine comes open. That's where the staying in bed happens. That's where the fucking flip outs happen. This is just Sean talking about Sean, third person. And yeah, for me, anyway. Joe, thank you for your patience.
Yeah. So for me, can you hear me?
Yeah, it would be good to hear you a little louder, but I got you.
For me, at baseline, suicide, or my reason for suicide, has always been like a get out of jail free card of, if anything gets too bad, I always have this. And so as there have been different reasons or different situations over the years, that's just been in my back pocket. And I've tried to use the card multiple times. And it's yeah. So I would say in some ways the reason hasn't changed.
Mm-hmm.
But there have been times where the reason, mental illness symptoms or trauma or anything like that, those are more specific reasons. But
Right.
at baseline, it's my way out, so to speak, if things are too bad.
Yeah, I just had a conversation with a man in Australia in his 70s, and has a pill. It's not pink and purple, but it might as well be. I won't actually say the kind of pill. Even Sean draws a line from time to time. You know what it is, probably. But anyway, that pill helps him so much, just knowing it's there. I'm not suggesting people get a pill that could kill them, and I'm not suggesting it was really interesting the way he put it, and I don't remember all the details. Yeah. It's the kind of thing like a lot of people would say, like, oh my God, in under no circumstances, get that out of your house. Whereas other people, not all, some would be like, no, you don't get it.
Yeah.
Like, it's a thing that actually helps me.
Yeah, in a way, I can function day to day knowing if it's bad, I have that pill type of thing.
Right. Right. And if
And
anyone's
so,
wondering, so yeah, Joe, I don't mean to cut you off.
oh no, it's just if something, like I said, if there's, I lost my train of thought, but yeah, essentially, having that pill, knowing like that if there's something bad enough, it's there for me, but then it helps you kind of think about it of like, is this bad enough? Nah, we'll save the pill for later. Type of thing. Yeah. So nothing has been bad enough type of thing for the pill for some people. But anyway.
Right. Yeah, no. It is so fascinating to me. All right, I just got to really thank you all, because these conversations are so good. And it's almost amazing to me that people aren't having these conversations like all the time. Like, not all the time. Like, there's definitely a time to talk about gardening. I pick on gardening a lot. I don't know why. And there's definitely a time to talk about another hobby you have and work, of course. But like, life and death is just a fascinating topic. It's fucking cool. Thank you again. So cool. Does anyone want to share? This is related, and I'm going to keep bringing it back. Sorry, Michelle, did you want to add something? I'm sorry if I missed that. Do it.
Oh, well, I haven't answered the question yet. So if you had something else to say,
no, I screwed up. Thank you for publicly humiliating me. No, I'm just kidding. No, go ahead, answer. My apologies.
Well,
bring it, baby.
Well, it's actually interesting because like I had an idea that I wanted to say from the beginning before. I kind of thought about this over the evening here. And now I have so much more to say because I went last and I heard everyone else's stuff first.
Right.
But I think to sum it up first is I would say that I have two ways of sort of clarifying it at this point, which is that there's the reasons, which I would say you could say as like stimuli, and then there's the reasons that are the underlying, psychology, the trauma response, the triggers, the
Mm-hmm.
things in your head, right? And what I've learned in the 2 years since being on the podcast is a lot of stuff about psychology, and also a lot of stuff about diagnoses and things that I didn't have yet, and some that I had had in the past and had just completely and totally forgotten about, repressed, and have regained a lot of memories in the past 2 years. And so what I'm realizing is that for me, and probably for a lot of people, I would assume, the stimuli, the factor, the thing that's like a triggering, painful thing might change all the time. When I was young, it might have been the abuse. When I was, and then, like some of it was like, trans stuff and dysphoria. And then later on, you move out of that home or whatever, and you think like, why am I still feeling this way? And you have other reasons, and you keep going in life, and you have more and more reasons. And so like the stimuli might be changing all the time, that's triggering the response, but the underlying sort of biochemical trained responses that we have to how we handle these things, that is what goes, oh, suicide, all the time in the head. That part has never changed. One thing you did say, we talked about in our episode, was you asked me at one point, because I said that for like 5 years when I was living out in the countryside here in Japan, I didn't have any issues with suicide. And
Right.
they said that the only things was like you had friends, had a decent salary, and could be out. And
Right.
now
Right. Right.
I've been in a
Right.
situation where the money is always bad. It's a constant problem. Things are up and down with friends and all that kind of stuff. And so what I realized is that, oh, those 5 years weren't good because there was something that I was doing, right then that I should be, doing better now, or anything like that, or that like, oh, this just goes away magically. It was, there weren't as many stimuli attacking me, causing that response.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, did it go away? No, it just wasn't being triggered as much. And now that I'm back in that situation where I'm being triggered more all the time, and memories are coming back, and diagnosis and all kinds of things in life, that way of handling it is fresh in my mind and active in
Mm-hmm.
my mind.
Mm-hmm. I remember that as you shared that. Yes, like we had a few
One,
friends,
oh,
decent
sorry.
money, and it just got better. Not great, it was a little better. A few friends, a couple of bucks, and some decent food, and that helps some, right? Michelle, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing I meant to add too is that I can, obviously I have to keep it very, very vague, but I'm currently working in an environment where there are a lot of teenagers who are
Yeah.
struggling with
Mm-hmm.
suicidal issues,
Mm-hmm.
self-harm issues, and a lot of other things. And I'm now in a position, knowing everything that I know, like having all the knowledge that I've experienced in my life, I'm now in a position to go and try on some level to help those people, those
Mm-hmm.
kids.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have learned is that the action of doing that actually helps me, because not only do I know what they're probably feeling and have the ability to relate to them, but it gives me the sense of, A, I'm not alone in this. B, my experiences can help them, and I have value, which is something that I've always struggled with. So it's so different now, where it was like there was absolutely no usefulness to this, and now there's like a ton of usefulness to it.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that's one thing that for sure keeps people alive, right? Is it's almost cliche, right? But we went through this awful thing, and somehow you can actually use it, for lack of a better word. Somehow, maybe it makes it bearable. By the way, I don't know when people have to leave. if anybody happens to be watching this and has a question, you should be able to use the chat function. I think it would be on YouTube. And we should see it. I don't know for sure. That's how it's worked in the past. Also, if anyone who's here right now, the 5 of you human beings, and you have a specific question for somebody here, whether it's me or somebody else, put it in the chat, and then they can opt if they want to answer it. It might be something they don't want to answer. And we're live. That's okay. As you think about that, I want to add something. Elizabeth's question also, and I think it was just not the reasons for staying alive, because I know for sure everyone here is alive, and you're an amazing group of people to talk to about this, because as far as I know, we can't talk to people who died, and so you are only humans in the world who can, not the only 5, but this group of people are the only ones who I think I want to talk to about this. It's fascinating to me. You're like the experts. So is the reasons for living, are we just flipping that answer? Is it that simple? I imagine not. Right? Sometimes you get the answer just by reversing the answer. So Ash, the reasons for living, however you sort of describe that or think about that, have they changed for you? Yeah, Ash. And then
They've changed for me. A lot of it is my family now. More so my nieces and nephew. I love those kids to death. They are pretty much my reason for living. It used to be just my job, and I've learned now that I can't live for just that. I need to find more. And now it's the kids. It is really well, they're not kids anymore. They're teenagers, but you know,
kids.
it's it's the kids. It's them. I love them as if they were my own, and I don't have kids of my own. I can't have kids of my own. So my nieces and nephew are like my kids, and
Mhm.
that has changed my entire outlook on living now.
It reminds me of that movie that's probably predates many of you, and I don't even remember the name, but it was Billy Crystal, and they were on a horse, I think, and they went away on a trip, and it was his buddies, and he was lost, and he was sad, and he was lonely, and he was depressed, and he couldn't connect. And at the end of the movie, there was just like, you got to find the one thing. And they were like, what the fuck are you talking about? What does that mean? And then there's a shot of the kids coming, and he's good. And that was a long way of me saying that's what I was thinking about, Ash. You kids, yeah, man, that's cool. That's it. Is that enough? Is that enough?
For me, it's enough.
Wow. That's a protective factor, as some people sometimes talk about. The love of giving and getting. I'm adding some words here, but I think they apply, Ash. That connection, love back and forth with your nephews and nieces in large part. That's it. That's enough. So cool. Huh. Next up, we have M. Thank you for doing exactly what I'm. City Slickers. Yes, thank you, Michelle, who's significantly younger than me. But yes, City Slickers. All right, M. I believe you have an answer, and then we'll go to Joe after that.
Yeah, so one thing that has changed for me is just that I've become a lot more serious and have grown a lot in my faith since maybe my teenage years and early 20s. And as I learn more about God and my relationship deepens, it does come back to that aspect of, am I willing to deal with maybe eternal consequences of this? How will me doing this impact others? Did I leave the earth too soon before God could use me for his intended purpose? Which kind of goes back to what we talked about on our podcast episode about fistfights with God and all of that. Another thing that has changed is just that as I've had more and more failed attempts, I've begun to grasp more and more the ramifications of what failed attempts can do to my life. Like oftentimes I might have a plan, but I agonize a lot more over it because I'm like, is this going to leave me with paralysis? Is this going to leave me locked in a mental hospital again with like little to no freedom is like what,
Right.
how is this going to affect my job, or like, and then
Right.
also just I do have two nieces and just wanting to set a good example for them. So
Right.
I'd say younger, like earlier on in my life, I didn't have a lot of reasons not to, other than maybe my family would be upset. But now that I'm older, there are some things that do pop up as red flags. So,
Red flags meaning reasons to not take your life. Is that what you're saying? So I'm understanding.
yeah, I mean, reasons to not take my life, and more so just to really think through and make sure that I'm good with my decision before I make it, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Right. Right. Yeah. 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 And what you bring up about, well, if you do it, you want it to work, and that's one reason why people don't do it. Or paralysis you use, right? That was that kind of stuff was the birthplace for this pink and purple pill question, right? Take that stuff out. Do you want to be alive? We'll take care of the other stuff. But so people sometimes wonder, why in the world would you ask that? It's interesting. And then I want to get to and then Joe has something to say, and Michelle. But I want to add something. I asked that pink and purple pill question. By the way, if you're wondering, because I'm going to be asking that question more. I feel like I had a moment last night where I was like, it's the pink and purple pill tour coming to a location soon. The pink and purple pill, if you take it, you die. It's peaceful, no pain, guaranteed to work. No one knows it's a suicide. If you're wondering and you hear that here or elsewhere, it's not real. I made it up. But the answers are telling. It's interesting. And I might ask that question to my guests here today. But first, staying on focus, Sean. Focus. Joe.
Yeah, so it's interesting. When we had our podcast, my podcast, it was, I don't know, maybe at that point I was like, no, I'm planning. I don't even know if I'm going to make it to my birthday in October. And so I ended up being hospitalized in September for a couple weeks. And during that time, I ended up reading this book. I can't remember the name of it, but essentially it was like CBT for suicide. Um, and it was like, to say that it was life changing feels like an understatement.
I think
Of like,
it was CBT.
yeah, cognitive behavioral therapy. Yeah,
Right. I think a lot of people are familiar with that, but it was specifically around suicide.
yeah.
All right. We'll
And
drop the book name if we got it.
I'll have to. I don't remember it, but I'll.
Yeah, well, we'll find it. Let me know. I could put it in the description of this
Yeah.
content after.
So I read that book, and it seems so simple and like, I don't know, trite or cliche. I don't know what the word is, but essentially, one of the things that I took from it that has completely changed my approach to suicide is like, the book is basically saying like, just don't do it. And I'm like, that sounds really like what? But somehow something in it clicked where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do it. Like, I will not take that action anymore. I still have suicidal ideation on a very regular basis, but where I'm at now is like, I don't know, I still don't want to be here. Like, but if the universe wants me gone, great. I'm not going to argue, but I'm not going to do its dirty work for it.
Okay.
Like, they have to, or it, whatever it is. Like,
Yeah.
if it wants to send a bus along, great, hit me. But
Okay.
like,
Right.
I'm not going to do, I personally, like myself, I'm not going to take action on it.
Right. Wow. Okay. That's an
Yeah.
interesting thing to get from a book. That's a big one.
I know. Yeah. It was like, I don't know. It shocked me, honestly. I never thought that I would ever think about suicide in this way. And it's been
Yeah.
probably 15 years that I've, had that ideation. I've had 6 attempts. Like, I was like all in on it. And yeah, I don't know.
Right.
It's just like, I don't yeah, I can't explain it, but
Well,
and I've had, oh, go
right.
ahead.
Yeah. We'll read the book
I've
if they
had
want to know the
multiple,
explanation. Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I keep interrupting.
No, I
Um,
keep interrupting. Sorry.
I've had multiple instances since September where before it would be like, all right, I'm out.
Yeah.
There have been
Right.
some really hard things. Um, but it's just been like, but I'm not going to do it. Like, I already said I'm not going to do it. And so I'm not going to do it. But hey, universe, it'd be really cool if you sent that bus along now. But, you know,
That's a
um,
shift for sure. Yeah, that is really
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Right. But it's sort of, you'd said earlier, and maybe I misunderstood that having a pill or a metaphorical pill is sort of like this helps you. But
Mhm.
if you're now turning that off and it's sort of like, I'm just not going to do it, can those two coexist, those ideas, or am I not understanding?
No, so I think because I did, like, I had that metaphorical pill for since I was 13.
Right.
Um, and at this point, it's still not very, the idea of it sounds really nice to have, but I'm like kind of like not on a daily basis, but frequently I have to like kind of fight against that idea now.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, no, I said I'm not going to do it. Like, I did like got rid of the pill, but I know that I
Mm-hmm.
can still get the pill if I need to, but I'm not going to. Like, I'm not going to go to the store to get the pill type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Um,
It's in a way, and I'm just, this is a connection I'm making. Maybe you're not,
mhm.
like, sort of like somebody struggling with alcohol. They're like, I'm just not going to drink. I'm going to want to drink. Like,
Yeah.
I really want to drink. I'm just making a choice not to drink. Period.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
Kinda. I don't know.
Yeah,
I went
no,
to a meeting the
that's
other
a
day.
good example or kind of
Totally available.
yeah. Yes, exactly. But I'm sure that there's, or I hope that there's not a time in life where it gets so bad that I'm like, I got to go to the store. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but at the moment, like I said, I've had some pretty bad situations since September, but
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to be like, nope, not going to do it. Um, but I do kind of on the flip side now, like I do, I think more about like I'm driving and I'm like, oh, it'd be cool if that car hit me. Like, I think a lot more about that now.
That's really interesting. Okay,
So kind of
so
shifted to
right.
that, but
I'm noticing that I'm getting into, like, not therapist mode, but almost like, oh, and I hate that. So, because you all have to remember, my 98% of what I've done, I've run groups before, but I'm one-on-one and it's pre-recorded. So I can be a goofball knowing no one's going to hear it. This is a fascinating change, right? So I'm
yeah,
like, how do I find my sweet spot? And but the point is here, Joe, I want to honor what you're saying and listen more. And it is interesting that you can say now that's what we got. I'm not going to do it, but I want the but kind of hoping more that bus just swerves.
yeah, exactly.
And that's what nuance is, y'all. That's how everything works. And when you need to go black and white, why nothing works? Because that's just never how shit is. I want to ask a question and then I'm going to get to you, Michelle. I know you've been very patient and I know it's late there. Your yawning is 100% okay because it's 2 a.m. I want to know before Michelle, and then we'll segue to you. If you want to share this, are you suicidal right now? I
Yes.
don't necessarily mean in this second. You know what I mean. In your life these days, a no answer is simply a no answer. It doesn't mean shit.
Yes.
So you are suicidal, Joe. Okay.
And I think I have been September. It's just, like I said,
This
I'm
is
not
so
going to do it.
interesting that you just said the whole thing about I'm just not going to do it. I love it. It's so fucking cool. Cool is not the right word because then I seem like a total freak, but
No.
okay. So Joe and Callie is in a space where it's just I'm suicidal. I have been for a while, but I'm not going to do it. That's where you're at.
Yep.
Okay. No pressure. If anyone wants to also just put it in the chat, that's cool. Ash, you're muted. So first unmute. Yep.
As of right now, no, but I do have my days.
Mm-hmm. Right. And for again, to remind anyone who's watching live or more likely in the future sometimes, yeah, this is the context here is everyone here is either try to come real damn close and sometimes multiple. So, that matters. That's part of it. Boy, oh boy, that purple and pill question is going to be asked to the general population. I'm going to get some data from that. Because I bet a whole lot more people would save it than we think. Or maybe take it. I don't know. I got a lot to say about the saving it thing, which is kind of not really this conversation today, but all right. You all know the question I posed. I'll move on. Michelle, you didn't answer this part of it. Yes, though M put in the chat, still suicidal. Okay. I hope I apologize if I wasn't supposed to say that aloud, but I think it is. If not, I fucked up. Michelle, do you want to unmute and answer the thing you were going to say?
Yeah. Well, I in answer to the last question, I did say, ideation, like suicidal ideation, is still pretty regular. It's not like a constant every moment, but it is like a thing that happens fairly frequently. But I tend to like bounce back and forth between that and like self-harm thoughts. So, and part of that has been trying to figure out like how to actually like express those feelings, because that's kind of a difficult thing for me to figure out. And it's especially difficult when you take a train to work every single day and you're standing on a train platform with no guardrails in front of you, and there are trains that whizzing past at 60, 70 miles per hour. It's kind of frightening actually on some level.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's okay now, I'll just go into my answer to the first question about what keeps you going.
But yeah. How if what keeps you alive is sort of shifted, or just what keeps you alive?
Yeah. I thought, and this is something that I was going to go back to like our episode. I thought it was going to be something related to like family or something like that. I was kind of hoping that maybe something would change in my family after this podcast came out, and some things did change. My relationship with my mom got better for a couple months, and then she went way off the political deep end and decided that all trans people are mass murderers who shoot up churches and stuff, and I just decided, okay, I'm done with this. And so that just went away instead. But one of the things that did change actually is that I finally got in touch with my my half sister and then my brother, who I hadn't seen or heard from in 13 years, because apparently my family hadn't told them why I was no longer in their life. I was just kind of kicked out of their life one day, and they were never told that, why, who I was or anything like that. And I thought, like, oh, my sister has been really supportive and everything, and I thought that will help me, stay alive. But I realized very quickly, like, I don't care, because they're not people who matter to me in that way. And what I mean is, they don't matter to me in the sense that like they're not in danger. If something happens to me, if I'm gone one day, their lives are going to keep on going, just as it always was. So really what it comes down to is, what value is my life, and who is there that is in some way dependent on me being around. And ultimately, like pretty much everybody in my family except for my sister, my ex, my child, everyone is gone now. All of those ties have been closed. So now it turns out it's, my work. It's those young people at my work that I'm working with who, if I, I'm thinking about it all the time, but if I do it, if I actually do it, and it would be really easy probably to do it at this point, if I wasn't so freaked out by the idea of the trains thing, like if I did that, what I'm saying to them is there's no hope. And I don't want to say that to them. I know that it's probably true. It certainly feels true for me often, and I'm sure it feels true for them. But I kind of want them to know that, like, hey, I get it. This feels true, and you're not the only person that this feels true to. But like, you can talk to me. I'll talk to you. I mean, like, I'm in a play next week because someone was unable to do their role, and it's all in Japanese, which is crazy for me to do. But I've been thinking, like, every time like a suicidal thought comes in my head over the past 2 weeks, it's like, who's gonna play that part? And that seems like such a silly thing, but being there for people who are younger and they're like way more in the moment with trauma and pain and abuse and other things that are, eating disorders and everything else that's going on in their lives. Whereas I'm 25 years or more past that and still in it a lot, but able to show them what, 20 something years on from that looks like. That's had way, way, way more positive effect than anything else in my life. Even if I won't answer the purple question. But
well, you said two things that are huge, right? Being needed is huge, or feeling needed. I don't know if those are the two same things.
Yeah.
And a goal, man. And it's so I mean, that is literally, page 1 of Google of how do I stay alive? I'm sure that shit would come on. There's nothing original here. But like when I hear someone saying I was suicidal and I'm maybe a little bit less that or less likely to act because of X and Y, and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I would venture to say that I don't have numbers. I don't do the data on my guests that way. Maybe that's, I don't know, but I would say not feeling needed is pretty high up. Yeah, go ahead, Michelle. And then I think Em wants to share a few things too.
Related to that, I was having a conversation with one of my coworkers about pretty much this topic. And I was telling her because, most of my coworkers have never dealt with these kinds of things themselves personally. They're in a situation where they have to help people, but they don't have that relationship. And I was telling her, like, the voice that I have, and I don't want to get into the dissociative identity stuff right now, but nevertheless, the voice that I have that tells me that I'm useless and worthless and trash and all those kinds of things, that voice is never going to go away. I might know how to, say no to that voice. I might know how to, keep that voice quieter. I might know how to talk to that voice and say, hey, look, let's negotiate this. But that doesn't mean that it's ever going to go away. And feeling needed is one of the best ways to say no to that voice. And so when I am thinking about, these young people who, some of them have that same voice in them, we were talking about, like, everyone wants to fix things. Everyone wants to fix it. We got to fix it. But there's no fixing that, really. And like, I want them to know that, you're probably not going to be able to fix this, and that is okay.
This is reminding me of honest conversations. Not just that we're having an honest conversation, but like what you're saying, Michelle, is different than it's going to get better. everything's going to be okay. That's okay too if you feel that way. But the reality is it doesn't always get better, however you're defining better. And so then you make a choice of, do you want to live with that or not? And how do you live with that? That matters. That's honest. And I actually think young people generally, maybe not a 5-year-old, right? That's very young. And you kind of want to Disneyfy things for a 5-year-old, I think. I don't have kids. I don't know. But at some point, honesty, truth, real shit is appreciated. And the candy coating and all this stuff, I get it, but like, I don't know. Am I wrong? I mean, this, you guys are probably mostly on board with what I'm saying. You wouldn't even shown up today, so this is a super self-selected group, which I appreciate. But it's like, let me just be real about it. We're not giving anybody a gun here and saying go into the woods, do it. That would be a shitty thing to do, I think. But like, hey, let's get real, man. Okay, sorry, I blab. Thanks, Michelle. On to M and then Elizabeth. Both have some things they want to share in response to this either question or conversation. And I hope that I can. Where is M? M, are you?
I'm right here.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so I just wanted to expand a little bit on the statement of being still suicidal. I think
Yeah.
for a long time I've related to what Joe said as just having suicide as an escape plan or a quick exit route if I need it. And I would say that within that, those suicidal thoughts that are pretty much always there, it oscillates pretty frequently and pretty dramatically between I want to do this and because of my values, I know that I can't, or I want to do this and what can this look like or how can I make this happen, which would be the point where I start looking at methods and start planning. And I would say at this point, the difference between me staying alive versus not attempting or going through a suicide is not allowing myself to get sucked into planning and looking at methods, because once I do that, it gets really, really hard for me to pull myself out of that, because then it's just way too enticing and too like close, I guess. So
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Elizabeth, when just if anyone's watching, we're pachinkoing a little bit because we brought up a few things. So roll with it. It's all kind of, we're talking about suicide, y'all. That was the deal from the beginning in July of 2020. So the format's a little different. It's just the same deal. We're talking about it. Elizabeth, you have to unmute. I think I can do that for you. And you wanted to share some stuff about some stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So, boy, a lot has happened between there and here, and who was talking and what I was thinking and what I want to get out of my mouth now. But when Michelle was talking about feeling needed, and in particular, working with kids, teenagers, being a first responder, that brought up so much emotion, like tears, just. And that's because it's like the opposite for me right now, is that like my own unresolved, undealt with traumas were so triggered by being a first responder, working with children and teenagers who had attempted showing up, some of them completed suicide at the age of 11. And then, I mean, to this day, I still keep in touch with, even though I had to leave the job because so much of my own trauma was triggered that I was told I was decompensating. And I left the job, but I've continued to stay in touch with some of those teenagers, and they reach out to me on a weekly basis to this day. And the fact that they need me, and the fact that I'm realizing that I have so much of my own undealt with shit that it renders me basically incompetent, that I can't be there for them, that's what's exacerbating my suicidal intentions, ideations. So that was just a striking thing. And then as more went on about being needed, it's one of those things that, like, I can't stand the feeling right now of being needed. In fact, that very feeling of being needed is what makes me want to just obliterate myself, because so I'm just embarking on internal family systems therapy and somatic experiencing therapy, which I think is going to be my saving grace. But there's so many, there's like the majority of my life, there was nobody there for me. There was no protection for me. There was no safety. There was no, like, I needed, but for some reason my entire life I've like my adult life I've turned into this person who is there for people. I'm and I'm also realizing that, like, whatever I needed, I ended up getting a certification in, or becoming a coach for, or like doing it so that I could be that person who I wish had been there for me, literally. And now I'm at, it's like life is having a reckoning with me, and it's like, holy shit, I need somebody to be there for me. I need to not be needed. I mean, even my dogs needing my attention anymore are just like, I can't. I don't want to be needed. It makes the suicidal ideation intensify. So I just find that interesting, and I'm sure I'm not the only person on the planet who, because I've also learned, whenever you feel like you're the only person that's experiencing this, you quickly realize you're not, amongst 8 billion people. So yeah, and there was something else. It was about what Joe was saying. There was so much like dissonance at first, because, but Sean, you pointed it out. It was that, wait a minute, there's so much like relief in knowing that we can do it. We have this means, whatever it is, whatever your mode is, or your way that you would end your life, like just simply knowing that you have that there somehow relieves this. What I think it does, for me, I'll speak for myself, is it gives autonomy. It gives the feeling of like, I'm the fucking boss of my life. And if I want to end it, then I'll end it the way I want to end it. Like, there's something empowering, and I think it's about autonomy, and it helps. And then once you know that, it's like, I don't want to do it because, at least I know I can if I want to. And that's empowering. And then you were talking about how, so correct me if I'm wrong, but then something about in the book how you learned that you didn't want to do it. I don't know, something happened in my mind. I was trying to put it all together, and then all of a sudden I realized, no, it's still ultimately about empowerment. Like, you still are making the choice. You're choosing not to do it. You're still and that's where it comes in. That's what's so important. And maybe Michelle knows this with working with teens and kids. It's like everybody wants to take their power away. The minute they find adults, everybody in their life, their teachers, the schools, everybody, the minute they find out they are, ideating or maybe just self-harming, it's like, call in the forces, put on the cuffs, like clear everything out that they could do it with. And that only exacerbates the problem. Whereas when one-on-one, I could be like, you know what, I want to hear all about it. Let's talk about the details. What would you do? Somehow that diffuses it. So there's something really fucking profound about choice and being it and having the freedom to do it. And I don't know how that relates to being needed, but for me right now, there's like, I need the choice, I need the autonomy, and I can't fucking deal with being needed right now, because I need maybe to just, I don't know yet, but full disclosure, I'm about to go into, for the first time, where I'm not going to have to worry about that. So for 4 weeks, the next 4 weeks, I will be inpatient, and hopefully I can finally be utilizing the tools and using the tools that I've helps other people with, and I'm not going to have to be needed. I'm just going to.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll still have the choice, right? I still have the choice. I can walk out the door. I can come home and kill myself if I want. Yeah.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
all I have to say.
When do you leave?
Monday or Tuesday.
Okay, soon. Well, it points to this other thing where, like, we don't know this about people who have different ideas about one person needs to be needed badly, the other person wants nothing to do with anybody right now. Doesn't happen unless we have, like, you just let people talk about it. That's how you find this shit out. That's how you hear people out. That's how you hear that's how you do it. I think you're so right
One
about.
more thing. Can I say one more thing? It's important. And that's that my daughter is in a good place right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the first fucking time, I'm finally like, okay, she's going to be okay for 4 weeks. Like, she is not going to fall apart or kill herself, or, for 4 weeks, she's going to be okay without me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was also incredibly important. Everything hinged on that. Like, if she had been like, no, Mom, I can't do this, you can't go away for 4 weeks, I wouldn't have done it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I haven't found the words to this yet, but I do think that I don't know if the word is autonomy or agency or choice or something like that. If you let people, it's not letting people kill themselves. It's not necessarily creating programs of euthanasia or assisted suicide. It is letting people have the idea, letting people have agency, letting people just even the idea of it will impact or influence the way you engage with them. And I think less likely to be the go here, do this, no, now, this, now, go there now, do now. I can't handle. Hold up. All right, so now you're going to do whatever you need to do. I know ultimately you have that choice, so let's talk. That's a totally different fucking conversation. And I don't think 98% of the people have a fucking clue of what I'm talking about. So I have to find a way to make that more palatable or more because it's so big.
Can I say
Right?
something about that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but you can cite the research that's been done where, I mean, this one's just at the top of my head because I just read it. But in European cultures, there's less alcoholism amongst, well, youth in particular. So, like at the family dinner table at a very young age, because especially in actually in South American cultures too, they allow them to drink a little bit of alcohol. And so it's not anything that's made taboo, anything that's made like prohibited, anything that where people are like, no, 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 that's so obvious. I don't even know why it has to be brought up anymore. And we know that the more something is prohibited, all you have to do is be around a child and you tell them no, and that's the thing they want to do. Right, like starting at the age of 2, it's like, don't touch that, it'll hurt you, or don't touch that, it's hot, and they have to fucking do it just because they need to find out for themselves. So it's I don't know why it's such a mystery that it should be the same for anything else, like even thinking about ending your life. Like, and if people, I found that when I worked with the teens that were suicidal, the more questions I asked them about it, the more I gave them the opportunity to talk about, so what do you think is going to happen after you end your life? Or what do you think it'll feel like? What do you think it'll smell like? What do you think it'll taste like? Do you think there's anything after? How do you think it will? Like, the more I got them to engage in actually thinking about this, the more they were like, first of all, you're fucking weird. Like, nobody else is asking me these questions. And secondly, they were immediately, palpably, completely like, wow, I hadn't thought about that. And it just shifted everything.
Right. Yeah. Right. there, I think it's a conversation and a very good one for another, excuse me, live stream, among other places, about the why behind why we, generally speaking, as a culture, as a collective, approach this topic in this way, which tends to suffocate people. That's a long conversation. It comes up on the podcast fairly often, but yeah, I think everyone here probably agrees, with the idea of, wouldn't it be nice if I could just talk more about it openly and not have to deal with what we almost always happens. So yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. So a couple, Michelle, and I believe I'm just looking at the chat here. Joe, let's go in order. Joe and then Michelle.
So this is in response to Elizabeth talking about impatient.
Mm-hmm.
I was impatient like when I read the book. And I don't know that the book would have had the same impact if I just read it in daily life, because in impatient, you're like, well, in a way, you're like obviously trapped, so to speak, and like you can't leave. They kind of, there's like meal times or whatever, but like there's a freedom in it where I'm like, there is no way that I can commit suicide, even if I wanted to. And I like your brain, like you don't have to use your brain. Like there's like they tell you like, hey, eat right now. I'm like, okay, take your medication, okay, like, and you can just like I was like, my mind is not blank, but essentially blank. And so then when I was reading the book, it was like, oh, I can actually like hear it because I don't have to like, I'm not fighting suicidal thoughts right now. Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%. Slow shit down. Like you don't even know what's going to absorb into your brain if you're constantly on go. Constantly. That if you looked at my life, Joe, you'd be like, doesn't do that much, this guy. But it feels like I do. Yeah, sure. There's some stuff to do for the podcast, right? And I have normal life stuff. I gotta buy food, and right. No, everybody. It never stops, even a little bit. It shifts a little bit when I have a few drinks, right? There's a reason I drink. Never. And I will tell you, I had a really not a good stay at the UNC Psych Center several years ago. It's come up on the podcast. But you're right. Calm. Oh, I eat lunch at 12:30. Not 12. Not 1. 12:30. Oh, don't have to think about it. Didn't have to cook. Right? Just I'm here to work on myself. There's just nothing else to do. Okay. Wow. Maybe a book I read. And by the way, the book that you suggested is called Choosing to Live. If you heard what Joe said and you're curious, I have no connection to it, but it might be awesome. Maybe it absorbs in your brain and even sticks in a different way that it never will if you're constantly just trying to. It's so fucking interesting, man. Some people would be like, oh, but that's such a luxury you have that you get to turn off for a few days. It's like, yeah, but we're living in a really weird world where we never had to deal with a lot of this stuff. So if you don't have a place, whether it's a psych center or a fancy retreat in Santa Fe or a nature walk for whatever, right? I bet we lose a lot of people just because they never have some relief.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm getting the order right here, but I believe it was Michelle. But I realize you all might be responding to a few different things. That's fine. That's called it's called a group conversation. Michelle and then M. Michelle?
Yeah, I wanted to respond to two things that Elizabeth said, and I'll hit them in the order that I. No, sure. I'll say this. I'll say the easy part first and the harder part second. The easy part is that you're absolutely right with what you said about, how people want to take away the control of kids, especially like, teenagers and stuff, and really everybody, Like anybody who's like, oh, I'm feeling suicidal. It's like, oh, okay, cool. We're gonna call these people. You're gonna go into this place. Whatever. I am obviously limited by the rules of the working environment that I'm in. But I have made it clear to my coworkers that my intention is to, as best as we can work within that framework, make sure that anyone who talks to me about these things knows that it's safe to talk to me, that I'm not going to just go and like call someone and throw them into a hospital, that if they need to keep something secret, if it's, as long as it's something that's not breaking the law or something like that, and of course, like, or even my my rules with the employer, like, I'm going to do the absolute best that I can to make sure that they feel like they can talk to me without any fear that I'm going to hurt them or tell the wrong person. Because I told my coworker, like, you have to consider sometimes that if a student's telling you about being abused and you go and run off to their parents and say, we have to tell you that your kid's being abused, it could be the parent that's abusing them, and you could have just told the worst person on the planet to tell. And I know that because that's what happened to me when I was a kid, all the time. And I learned to stop talking. And so I don't want them to feel that way. So that's absolutely, you're correct. And within whatever powers I have, that's how I try to do. And I'm not going to say like, hey, look, we're going to take your knives away. Hey, look, we're going to, like, I want them to know that, like, yeah, I know this stuff might help you right now. And I had to tell my coworker, like, sometimes these people, like some of these kids who are, self-harming and stuff, that might be the only thing keeping them from doing something way worse.
Right. Michelle,
and
by the way,
I can't be in the way for that. Yeah, sorry.
Can I ask a question? It's a little tongue in cheek, but I mean it. Did you learn it, or were you learned to stop talking? I would argue, and these two can coexist, of course, you were taught to stop talking. I think that the message, for me, how is it for you? Because it feels like the messages you get are like, no. And I don't know, maybe I'm just seeing it so one-sided.
I think what I mean by that is that I learned that was the only way to stay safe.
Yeah.
That if I didn't do it, the consequences, I mean, yes, I was definitely told, like, shut the hell up, or, you're going to get beaten, obviously. But what my brain learned was you cannot talk to people unless you are 100% sure that they're safe, and you cannot ever be 100% sure that someone's safe. So just don't talk to them. Yeah, so like that was the lesson that I took from what they were saying, because they definitely weren't saying exactly that, but I got that lesson nonetheless.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily mean explicitly,
right?
Like
but I mean,
in a classroom saying you shouldn't talk. But I mean, all that is an education of sorts.
Yeah.
Is a
sort
of
totally
like,
is.
all right, I'm learning what I got to learn here to be okay. And
well, when you've got your dad like pin you up against the wall, choking you, being like, how dare you tell someone, what's happening in our family? It's like, I'm being abused. I'm a teenager. What do you want me to do?
Right. It's so easy to see things that people do or things they say as like, oh, they're not well. It's like, you can so often flip that to, oh, that's actually a sign of them being well or taking care of themselves or surviving, or, for lack of a better word, picking the lesser of two shitty options.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Sure, there are people. There are people that are making very strange choices, strange in quotes, that are having a I'm just picking something, a psychoaffective, some sort of major break, and you're like, yo, but most people are making very logical decisions. Why doesn't the person go outside? Well, there's a reason they probably don't go outside. That is based on something very real. Sorry, go ahead.
I think we're all trying to make order out of chaos, and the more chaos we have, the more chaotic the order looks from the outside.
So the reasons people want to live, I think, overlap a lot with having other humans understand this. and be all right with it and being like, tell me about that. That's not a fucking small thing. There will be people that say, but it's but there's so many other things that would be more effective, and it's like, that's a big one. I digress a little bit, Michelle. I think you had a couple points.
No,
you
you're
wanted to
fine. The other point that I wanted to say is that, like, you know, when talking, like you said, like, I mean, talking about it definitely does make it better for me. But at the same time, like, when the dirty secret is, and this is my dirty secret. I don't know if it's anyone else's dirty secret, but it's my dirty secret, is that, well, okay, this part isn't the dirty secret. This is just the reality, which is that when I'm working with kids or working with anybody who's dealing with these kind of things, doesn't have to be kids or teenagers specific, but like when I'm trying to help anybody who's struggling, because trust me, there's plenty of people in the trans community who are struggling with this stuff too. We always talk about how, like, talking about suicide doesn't make you suicidal necessarily, right? But I have found from but I have found for myself that talking about it does sometimes, or not even necessarily talking about it, more like thinking about talking about it with someone, like the aftermath of talking about it with someone, does kind of keep it fresh in my mind, keep it active in my mind. In a way that it might not be otherwise if I wasn't having those conversations with people. And the dirty secret is, I am okay with that. I am totally, completely, and totally fine with having suicidal ideation. It does not bother me. In fact, I kind of view it as like a warm blanket that I can wrap myself up in. It feels familiar. It feels soft and warm and almost romantic in a way. When I was young, when I was a teenager, you know, I used to write about it and write, you know, short stories and stuff that I kept hidden in journals, you know, that other people wouldn't see, or locked behind passwords on old laptops, you know, that were romanticizing these feelings, because like that was what I knew that made me feel better. And it's counterintuitive to a lot of people, but like, it's just like with the other things we were talking about, the self-harm or the drug or the whatever it is, like if that's what's making you feel better in that moment, I can't say like, oh, don't ever think about it. You shouldn't think about it. It's not good. For me, thinking about it, yeah, it's not great, but it feels nice. And then I don't know how to admit that to people sometimes, especially not people who don't understand at all, because they're just like, you're crazy, you're insane, lock you up, you know. And I'm blessed that I have coworkers right now, at least one coworker in particular, who, even though she has never been through this kind of stuff, she totally understands it. And she told me, like, you know, I think everyone's viewpoint is needed, and we shouldn't be just trying to fix people. We should be respecting all the people who have all the different things that are quote unquote wrong with them, have value for our society. Without them, we would not function. And I thought that, I mean, that blew my mind. So I find that this is just as healthy and active and warm and cozy and familiar a part of my life as anything else.
You said something about a dirty secret, and Joe, I think, said something about a dirty work. The word "dirty" is coming up later. All right, so wait, we got M and Joe and Elizabeth, and just to keep an eye on time, I'm going to wrap it up by about 2:00. Not that we need to, but just for the sake of a viewing audience, and we have to take account. I'm not sure the right amount of time, but I'm in no rush. But I know you probably have lives to get back to. I also know Michelle, it's very late there. Let me stop talking. I believe up next was M. I hope that's the right order. Then Joe, and then Elizabeth. M?
Yeah, just listening to all these conversations, I was having a lot of thoughts. Firstly, with what Elizabeth said about how for everyone that she needed when she was younger, she has become those things. And that's something I can relate to a lot. That is the whole reason why I went into the medical field in the first place. And it is a triggering place to be in at times, to be so deeply associated with those traumatizing things of your past. And so I think it's a fine balance to walk that is really hard some days, to both maintain your sense of purpose, but also not get triggered by your past. So it's like you're either feeling like you don't have a purpose because you're not doing the work that you want to be doing, or you're getting triggered. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation sometimes, which just only makes things feel more hopeless. And also piggybacking off of what everyone has been saying about just talking more openly and like not shutting down conversations of suicide right away. Like I think the most important people who have helped me in my life have been the people who have been willing to just listen and not be judgmental towards what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and like are people that I know trust me and trust my judgment and wouldn't want me to hurt myself, but are also not going to break trust by like going to the police or something. I mentioned in our podcast that like my therapist is someone who knows my warning signs and understands that I'm often going to bring suicide up in conversation, but also knows when she needs to be concerned and when she doesn't. And that is something that's been very helpful for me. Just because I know that I have that safe space to be honest and I don't have to worry about being honest, and that if it is a situation where I really am in danger, she will take action, and she has every right to do that as a fellow human being who just wants to see someone be safe and stay alive. So yeah, those are just some thoughts I was having.
Yeah, isn't it? Thanks. One thing I would love for people to know, and again, I don't know who's ever going to see this, and I'm imagining the people that watch it are. It's this sort of, what do we call this? Like preaching to the choir. Like you already get it, or you wouldn't be watching in the first place. And I'd love to be able to reach more people who aren't necessarily like that. But the thing is that when you give someone the opportunity to talk, we were talking about reasons to originally reasons to die, reasons to live. And I do think that what I think a lot of people look at it as, okay, I'll give you space to talk about it so that we can find reasons to live. I want to say, no, 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 no. Yeah, you can do that. You giving the space to talk is a reason for them to live. That is part of the reason to live. That's why it matters so much. That's not the only thing. But it's not just a means, it's the thing itself. Joe?
My response was earlier about the impatient thing.
Oh, okay. I missed that on the chat. My bad. Elizabeth, I'm just checking the chat. I think most people who wanted to talk are talking, and if we'll have one last opportunity after Elizabeth goes. Yes.
Oh, I was just imagining if, like, what it would be like if there was a 12-step sort of modeled program, or maybe it doesn't have to be 12-step modeled. I don't know that much about that model, except that it's extremely successful. So where it's just accepted that we can talk about ideating, we can talk about these impulses and desires and fantasies and all of these things, and it's not. So maybe the 12-step program isn't what it's like. I shouldn't have used that as an example because I don't really know that much about it. But just a place where you're not told, oh no, that's bad. Oh, we got to change that. You can't think that way. Like you got to stop that. It's like you can come, you can talk about it, and then you leave. And then it's like you got it out of your system. Maybe I don't know.
Right. Well, the idea of the thing I think you're referring to within the 12-step program, it's not uniquely 12-step. It's just you get to say whatever you want. There are some boundaries, like you can't start spitting venom at one of the people there, right? There are some boundaries, reasonable, but you get to talk what you want to say and how you want to say it, and nobody says anything back.
Right.
Maybe thank you. It's a reason that boundary or structure is in place. It creates this opportunity. And I'll tell you, Elizabeth, I've looked into that, and it doesn't really exist.
Yeah, I
I
know.
think there have been people that have tried, and I even found something that called itself 12-step for suicide. I believe they actually said SA in Tennessee. The 12-step isn't some top-down organization where they had to endorse it. Anybody can just do it, is the point. So they had a website. It was in Tennessee. And there may have been a few others that popped up, and they didn't last long. And I think the premise is great. There are unique things about it that make it very, very hard, though.
Well, what
But
about
that's
learning to
because of
live with wanting to die? Do
but
you think
because of
that
that. Hang on.
sorry.
But that's only a reflection of how we as a culture or the medical systems approach it. If they did it differently, we could have a space that's similar to that, I'm sure. But because we live in this bubble, this system, this ecosystem of the way it is, I don't think, because if you take it one step further, and in Alcoholics Anonymous, I go in, I say I want to stop drinking, everyone lets me talk. I go to a bar and I drink. All right, Sean slipped. But we're talking. I say I want to end my life, and I go end my life. What are they going to do? Who do they got to blame somebody? Did we miss something? Did somebody know? I'm not saying it would be that way, but it could be that way. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, that's why my idea of like a group where it's under the umbrella title of what I was hoping at one point to call my memoir or my book, Learning to Live with Wanting to Die. And so like under that umbrella thesis, it's like you're
Mm-hmm.
protected by
Mm-hmm.
this, even professed concept of like, I'm not wanting, or I am wanting to die, but I'm learning to live with wanting to do. It's about acceptance, because that's
Mm-hmm.
once again that peace that is the liberating peace. It's that autonomy. It's the right, to be the one who gets to decide, when and how you die. I don't know.
You know what? Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know. That's all. It's like I've thought about it a lot lately, and I've thought, because it would be nice to have a group, even if it was an online group, where you could talk with other people specifically about that, like about what are the ways that you think, just all of it, but without it being tagged as like, oh, now you're going to get sued for if
Right.
somebody leaves the group and kills themselves. No,
Right.
look, like it's called learning to live with. I can't fucking help if they decided they weren't learning enough about how to live with it.
Mm-hmm. Joe, hang on one second. Hold that thought, Joe. I want to get to you. I just want to respond to one thing. That, first of all, you can start that group today, and you'd have people that would join it. And I'm happy to reach out to everybody who's ever been a guest, and you could start that group right now if you want to do it. I don't know what would it look like. I don't know if it would be a slippery slope. There's no reason you can't. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying it's doable. The groups that I'm familiar with, including like Wildflower up in Massachusetts, but they have virtual, and some other spaces, here's always the rub. You can talk about suicide. You can talk about the idea of suicide. Maybe your attempts. It's because everything hinges on these imminent risk questions from the top down, from the biggest organizations in the world, from 988 to this, to this, to this, that the moment you get to, I'm thinking about it, and I have a method, means, and a particular timeline that I think ranges from like 48 to 72 hours, that's where everything changes. That's where you can't be honest. So you either have to make a choice, and this might be changing. You either have to make a choice of, we could talk almost all about it, but not quite all about it, should that apply to you. Or we can, but then I don't know what risks you're running or facing, right? I have not had any problems with my podcast, and there are people who have ended their life since talking with me. Could somebody say you're the reason? I mean, that would be ridiculous, but they could. Or you didn't do enough. They actually said they were planning on your pot. They said the words. What did you do? I heard them. I mean, some people would be like, that's criminal. Okay. I mean, they don't know all the other stuff that's going on behind the scenes in which, it doesn't make it to the podcast where I say, you are familiar with the resources that are available. And, I make sure people know that shit. But at the end of the day, it comes back to people are going to do what they want to do. It doesn't mean we're giving them a thumbs up and a gun and bullets. It's agency. It matters. It would decrease suicides. That's the irony. Joe, I'm sorry. Go ahead. That was my little platform response. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. So I wanted to respond to the 12-step method. So I'm a social worker, and I interact with people doing 12 steps. And something I've noticed from it is it's very much like you have to follow these rules. You are always fighting your addiction or behavior pattern or anything like that. Like you're always an alcoholic, and you're just kind of like muscling your way through. And with another option that I've done work with that I think is great, is harm reduction. And so how I kind of look at it is like, I'm suicidal, and everyone's like, well, you gotta like go to therapy, take medication, and you're not allowed to commit suicide, but like all of that. But harm reduction would be like, okay, I hear you're suicidal. What can we do in that space? We can have conversations. We can, like this is harm reduction of like, we know that this is already going to happen. What can we do in this space instead of just telling you, no, don't do that. And I personally think that's a lot more effective than a 12-step model. And that shows up in research with a lot of other things. So,
yeah. Thanks, Joe. Yeah. The component of the 12-step model that I think is most powerful, and there's a few, is this: you can talk about anything, or just about anything. And like it or not, everyone else in the room, you don't get to say anything. Now, there is obviously people talk after, and who knows what happens there, right? They're smoking their cigarettes and they're doing their things. And I've only been to a few meetings, but I got enough of a taste of it. That idea, I think, is brilliant. I understand all you're saying too, though, is this thing about everything is through that lens, which could be a problem. I've thought a lot about harm reduction, and I still think with suicide, it 100% applies, but I could see how people say, but suicide is different. I'm not saying it is. It's like if somebody's cutting a lot, what's the harm reduction? They cut less? They cut safer? Do we try to eliminate it?
I personally think it's, you can offer other options like rubber band, drawing on yourself with red marker, that kind of thing. But also like if they're going to cut, they're going to cut, and you can't just, no, stop cutting. Then it'd be like, okay, can we, use something like, don't use that sharp of a blade, or don't, like, here's, like, don't cut in this area because it's closer to an artery, or, like,
because in part taking cutting away entirely could be more problematic.
Yeah,
just like taking heroin away from someone who's a heroin addict.
Exactly, because that's their
probably
coping
problem,
mechanism.
right?
And
right.
Or
addiction, sometimes a physical addiction as well. But yeah, right.
Yeah, like you don't want to, like, obviously you don't want them to do that, and you want to offer like, here's some, I don't know, like mindfulness activity, because a lot of times cutting comes when you're at your peak, stress, emotions, and so if we can bring that down, great. They have that information, and you don't want them to cut. But if they're going to do it, then like make it safer.
And when you say if they're going to do it and we apply it to suicide, are we extending that to if they're going to end their lives or if they're going to consider ending their lives? Because if they're going to end their lives, do we say, okay, let them do it? Or, that's
Yeah,
why
they
it's
can
tricky
do
because
it.
it's so extreme and arguably permanent. Unlike cutting, unlike drinking, unlike heroin. This is the ultimate thing. Those are not. And that's where I'm like, what do we do there? What
I
might we
think
do there?
the extension here would be if you were considering planning, like that is the like that's the point where you're like, okay, I can listen, I can like, what can we do in life to maybe make this a little less close? It's that but at the end
Yeah,
of the day, like if they're going to commit suicide, there is no like with harm reduction in terms of drug use, we do it like, oh, here, use safe needles, be supervised, that kind of thing, because we don't want them to die. With suicide, we also don't want them to die, but that is the end goal.
right,
Whereas with
right.
drugs,
Yes.
like I just want to get high, or
Mhm.
so it
Yeah.
has its limits in terms of suicide, but I think that the model can still apply in a lot of ways to suicide.
All of this is all speaking to giving the space to talk about it. And it gets back to this agency thing. Because if you don't give agency, then you can't even start that conversation, I don't think. Or it's different. But if I say to you, yes, I know you're thinking about this. I know you might do it. I know if you want to do it, you're probably going to be able to do it. That's a different starting point. Anyway. All right, couple more. We got M and then Michelle. And then we'll close up. M?
Something I would just wanted to say is that, and this is really just reiterating what we've already been talking about, is just that telling someone no, don't do that isn't going to change anything. Because, like you just said, if they want to do it, they will find a way. And also, I feel like it's very important to, instead of just telling them no or telling them that they have reasons to live, show them what those reasons to live are. Give them a reason to want to stick around in this world. And I feel like I've had a lot of people in both camps in my life, and the people who have shown me reasons to stay are the people who have been the most helpful. And I've also had people who explicitly condone letting myself die, and that is not okay either. So it's a very, very fine line, but it pays dividends to be very intentional with how we deal with these kinds of conversations.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. There's a pretty clear difference, I think, between having a conversation and letting someone feel how they feel and legitimately doing that and saying, and I've just used this as a particular example, but you could use any number where it's like, I'm not giving somebody a loaded gun, walking them to the middle of the woods and helping them. I'm not saying that there might be people who could advocate for that. I'm not doing that. I don't think. It would have to be a very, very extreme situation and thought out, for me. I don't think anybody, well, there are exceptions. Sure, there are people out there that, and there's a particular website where you can find some of this stuff. I'm not telling you what it is, but you probably know it, where they're like gung ho, and it's like I'm not gung ho. I just there's a difference. Sorry, why did I make this about me? Jesus, Sean. God, you're literally not doing the thing you talk about doing. Michelle has some interesting thoughts on VR. What?
This is something that's been in my mind recently as an idea that popped up before, and I've kind of played around with this a little bit in the past, through video games and things, because I remember even when I was a teenager, I remember the very first game that I played where a character tried to kill themselves in the game was like just an earth-shattering like release of emotions for me that I needed so badly at that point, because growing up in Christian land, everything was, Jesus will help you if you have any struggles. You need to talk more to Jesus. If you're still depressed, then you're not Jesusing hard enough. And like when you finally find something that's like, oh yeah, people do try to kill themselves, and that's just how life is. That's what they needed. That was what their pain level was at, where they did that. It was like, oh. So my thought was, how what would I say, interesting would it be if we lived in a world where VR was advanced enough where the VR could just plug right into your brain, and you could feel stuff like it was really happening to you exactly, not just like you're putting on goggles, but where you literally feel like you're experiencing it. And in that world, you could take your life over and over and over again if you needed to. I started asking myself, like, what would the ramifications of that be? Where would I go with that? And for me, I think there's a lot of stuff that I would do every time I felt sad, every time I felt not just a little bit sad, but like every time I was ideating really hard. I would much rather go into that world and do something that is very, very strong and very painful, and very, my brain feels it and feels that emotional release of like taking that step. But then also kind of like in Groundhog Day, you wake up right after and it's, Cher
Ooh.
singing over again, but you don't want it to be
Yeah.
like exactly like Groundhog Day, but you can go back to your real life. You can disconnect from the VR and you can go back to it, I don't know what that would be like, but
I don't either. That opens up all sorts of possibilities.
Yeah.
Some sound promising and some could be rather not. I don't know.
Exactly, right? I mean, I think that's kind of what every cyberpunk VR kind of thing is about, is that question of like, what can of worms are you opening? But for me, and that would be what I would write if I were to write a novel about this idea. But, for me, I think personally, I might really enjoy that as just, finally getting the release of experiencing this thing that I've been thinking about for my entire life and have tried a couple times to do and not been successful at, and like actually feeling that feeling and then still being able to somehow walk away from that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't know, but I think it's a kind of a powerful question that I don't think anyone's really asked yet. Not anywhere that I've seen. I haven't seen that out there anywhere.
Well, I trust that if you do move forward with that and you need a title, that you will.
I know exactly who to go to, right?
Correct. You know who to call. And I believe I should be the first person to reach out to on that. I think I've earned it. Okay. I think I've earned it. You don't have to agree because you've heard my idea. 98% of my memoir titles are not good, but you don't understand that's how you get to good. Just don't happen. Once in a while, it just pops in. You're like, that's it. No, it's work. It's work. If you have anything else you want to share, any of you, now is the time. And while you think about that, I want to share to anybody who is, and I have one more question for you all. So stick on for a couple more minutes. Whether you're seeing this live, much more likely elsewhere, whether it's on YouTube or perhaps it's been shared here or there or wherever. I want to remind you that the Suicide Noted podcast, which started in July of 2020, honest conversations with attempt survivors or ideators. So if that's you or perhaps somebody you know, reach out to me. I'd love to talk. You don't have to send your story. You just have to want to talk about it. And find the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. We got a website. Finally, that'll be up soon with some other stuff. Makes it a little clearer how you can support the cause. I do some podcast training if you want to start a podcast and some other stuff. So that'll be there. We do need the support because ideally I'd like to do much more of this, whether it's in podcast form or live stream form or what other form. I'll leave it at that. And my final question for my guests, I know Ash had to leave. I spoke to all of you in the last couple of years, I believe. I don't know if I asked you this question. I probably did. I don't know when I started. I'm going to ask you again. It is optional. So if you want to share this, you can unmute and share it. I give you a pink and purple pill. If you take the pill, you go to sleep, and that doesn't need to be right away. You can give yourself a few hour window or whatever, but within a day, normal life functioning. There's absolutely no pain. You will die. You will not wake up. We can even add in that you have a dream, sleepy dream of your choice. Oh, one wonders what that would be. That's an option. And an option I think most people would take, but you don't, is that nobody knows it's a suicide. Now, of course, if you want people to know that, then you don't choose that part of the question, but that is the essence of the question. I won't call on anybody to answer that, but if you would like to answer, we got a minute or so left. Unmute. Tell me what you would do with that pill, Joe.
Last time you asked me that question on the podcast, I was like, yes, give it to me. And I think now even though it's very tempting, I would say no, thank you. Because I think it would go back to having like, oh, I have a pill in my house that I want to use, but I also don't I'm sticking to I'm not going to do it.
Yep.
I'll just wait for the bus. So yeah, I would say no.
That makes sense. Got it. I'll just wait for the bus, Joe, is what possibly a really good memoir title. I'm not saying it's the memoir title. I'm just saying it is. I like it. If I gave myself the pill, I'd probably chuck it, only because it's so easy. It's so easy. And that's part of the question. It is that easy. And, all right. That's it. That's live number 4. Michelle got her hand up. No. This is the big question. I want to hear it if you want to share it.
All right. Real quick, what you just said, Joe, reminded me of the end of the movie Ghost World, if anyone's seen it. It's literally the bus comes, and I won't say anything else. Maybe not exactly in the way you're thinking, but kind of in the way you're thinking. But anyway, I don't know. It's very up to interpretation. For me, gosh, I think I would keep it, because a part of me would love to take it, just right away. I think when I was on the podcast, I said that I would definitely take it. Right now, though, I know that there's a lot more that's really important that I need to do in my life right now for other people and also for myself. But I know that at some point in the future, there's going to come a time where I'm not in that job anymore and I'm not needed in the same way that I was once before, and things might get overwhelming, and I would love to have that always there as an option. So that's what I would do. I would keep it somewhere.
No expiration date in its current form.
Good.
That could change. Don't know. Maybe that's an option I can add to people. Like, you can have it and set your own expiration date. I don't. Not sure I would offer that. Mostly. The things we can do with the pill. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for taking almost 2 hours of your time. I appreciate it. And the people who are watching this, you know what you can do. The biggest thing you can do by far is to do a slightly better job of creating space. Call it whatever you want. Holding space, active listening. It's all basically the same thing. Is letting people feel how they feel, and trying to improve a little bit on your skill set or ability or interest in and engaging with them in a way where they might even feel better, certainly not worse. That's my goal. And I thank Elizabeth, Joe, M, and Michelle, and Ash for joining me. And we will be doing this at least once a week. So if you're getting used to this, by all means, tune in. I don't know, maybe more. That was the goal, but we'll see. This is awesome. Thank you, ladies. And bye, interwebs
NDM.
world. For now, what?
And M.
And M. Did I not say M?
I think you did. It was just like really fast in between a couple of names.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, thank you all. We'll leave it at that. And I'm going to stop it. But I'm going to stop the recording, but you can hang out a little bit if you want. I'm just letting you know. Bye, world. Talk to you soon. Ciao for now.